The year was 1852. There were rising tensions between the North and the South. The president was Millard Fillmore. Women were not treated on the same level as men. They could not vote and were not regarded as regular members of society. This was the fractured society that Susan B. Anthony had to live in. Throughout her life, Susan B. Anthony created committees and societies that helped fight for gender equality and for women to have a voice. Her actions paved the way for women's rights movement and broke the barrier of male dominance, ultimately leading to the 19th Amendment in 1919. Childhood. Her family had taught her that everyone was equal and had equal rights. Anthony and her friend, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, decided to form the Women's New York State Temperance Society in 1852. The group wanted to promote policy, but did not have access to things like a ballot box, so they used public education to spread the word. They used lectures, tracts, newspapers, and discussions to get out what they wanted. Their society encouraged women who were married to confirmed drunkards to divorce their husbands. They continued fighting until they saw progress. In 1868, Anthony Stanton and Parker Pillsbury decided to publish the first edition of the Revolution. They carried the motto,
"Men their rights and nothing more. Women their rights and nothing less."
1868, 172 women cast ballots in a separate box during the presidential election in Vineland, New Jersey. At the same time, the 14th Amendment was ratified, stating that any man born in the United States was an American citizen. In 1869, Susan B. Anthony led the National American Women's Suffrage Association, also known as the NAWSA, as the president. November of 1872, Susan B. Anthony and about 50 other women voted in the town of Rochester. At the time, it was illegal for women to vote, but she did it anyways. Her actions stood up to the barrier of women being banned from voting and started the process of slowly knocking down the barrier of women's suffrage. A few days later, she was arrested for her illegal actions. She was fined $100, and at her hearing she says,
"I shall never pay a dollar of your unjust penalty."
Anthony stuck to her word, never paying a dime for her crimes. By Susan B. Anthony in her speech that was named "Failure is Impossible." In 1872, she said,
"No self-respecting woman should wish or work for the success of a party that ignored herself."
In 1872, Anthony presented a Woman's Declaration of Rights with two colleagues at the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A few years later, in 1878, a woman's suffrage amendment was proposed to Congress. When the 19th Amendment was passed 41 years later, it had the exact same wording. Anthony has inspired other women to fight for their rights. Continued working hard. She traveled the nation, giving hundreds of speeches, and in doing so inspired many. In 1887, the first vote on a woman's right amendment was taken in the Senate and was defeated. In a newspaper article that was published on July 20th, 1896, Anthony said,
"Women will help men in the campaign as they always have done."
She says,
"But what will they get for it?"
On October 21st, 1902, Anthony made the first speech at the New York State Nurses Convention. In 1905, Susan B. Anthony met with President Roosevelt to try to help along with women's rights. February 15th, 1906, Anthony gave her famous "Failure is Impossible" speech at Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, Anthony passed away in 1906. but she clearly had made her mark. Anthony was good at strategy. Her discipline, energy, and ability to organize made her a strong and successful leader. Inspired by Anthony, women gathered in Washington, D.C. on March 3, 1913. They marched, but many were violently attacked and hospitalized. However, they finished the parade. On June 4th, 1919, the 19th Amendment was passed, and women gained the right to vote in elections. The 19th Amendment stated,
The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation.
ultimately giving women the right to vote. The next year, in 1920, the first woman voted in a presidential election. Anthony's work finally paid off big time, but she was unfortunately not there to see it. Rochester woman made a pilgrimage to her grave and placed their "I voted today" stickers on her gravestone. Failure is impossible became a motto for the ongoing fight for women's suffrage. Anthony's impact extended beyond just women's voting. Nowadays, women can do many things that weren't even imaginable back in Susan B. Anthony's time. Women can own property, go to school, have jobs that men have, and are not discriminated upon like they used to be. This is because Susan B. Anthony broke down the barrier of male dominance and set the women's rights movement in motion. In the year 1960, Jeanette Pickering Rankin was the first woman to hold federal office in the United States of America. She was elected to the House of Representatives as a Republican. Susan B. Anthony was put on the $1 coin in 1979, but was removed from the coin in 1981. In 1999, she was put back onto the coin and is still there to this day. In the year 1981, Sandra Day O'Connor was the first female to serve in the Supreme Court. A moderate conservative, she was known for dispassionate and meticulously researched opinions. In the year 1983, Sally Christine was the first American woman to fly into space. Now the military lets all genders serve their country and become heroes. Recently, Katie Sowers, the offensive assistant coach for the San Francisco 49ers, became the first woman to go to the Super Bowl. All of these and many more were due to Susan B. Anthony's heroic actions and wise words. Throughout her life, Anthony did many things that broke the barrier of women's suffrage and impacted many things today. Bye.